because, as you mentioned, okay, we've got top Nazis and future Bilderbergers creating this European Economic Group in 1946. By the early 50s, when they start to meet and plan all this through the Bilderberg Group, they start talking about, quote, pressing need to bring the German people together with the other peoples of Europe into a common market. And these documents came out of the 1955 Bilderberg meeting, documents which have now been released by the WikiLeaks website, which we reported on last week. So in 55, they're talking about creating a European common market, but not by the creation of a new authority. They said it's got to be done via a treaty, otherwise we're not going to get it done. So lo and behold, 2 years later, 1957, the first incarnation of the European Union, the European Economic Community, is passed via the Rome Treaty. Also, in the 55 Bilderberg documents, it talks about, quote, it might be better to proceed through the development of common market by treaty. I've talked about that. It also talks about the need to create a single European currency. And this is in 1955. The single European currency was only proposed in 1992. That's when it was first proposed.
And by the way, I'll make this point I make routinely, Paul. This is so important. We'll go back to what you were just saying. Remember in 2007, in all the capital cities of Europe, they had giant parades for 50 years of the euro, and people, nobody showed up, and it was empty streets, and they said, for all the fireworks displays and parades, they said, but we thought this thing just started in 2000. How is it 50 years of the euro? And that's because of the Treaty of Rome in 1957, you had the European Union, just like with the treaty they had in Waco in 2005 in March, and they said the treaty was secret, but people sued and got it. We are now in the North American Union, and down the road they'll announce, 20 years of the North American Union. People go, but I thought this started last year, and they'll be, it didn't, slave. So please continue, Paul.
Yeah, they actually had another EU ceremony in Paris last year when I was in Paris, and they had EU flags on top of the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe. Nobody seemed very interested in it, but it was just a statement, we own this is ours, and that's what they do with the EU flags everywhere now. But going back to what I was talking about, yeah, they proposed the euro in 1955, and that's 42, sorry, it's around about 40 years before it was actually first proposed and introduced. And so you've got a straight line between the Nazis, the creation of these groups which laid the foundations for the EU, then the Bilderberg Group, which is when they formalized the policies to create the EU and the euro, and then the creation of the EEC in 1957, and then obviously in the decade since, the EEC got bigger and bigger and eventually became the European Union in 1993. And in the 21st century, now we have the European Union basically laying everything out on the table and not even hiding behind this rationalization that it's just a trading partnership. And they've proposed now with the Lisbon Treaty basically to take away any remaining sovereignty whatsoever held by nation states and create a truly federal European superstate. And the origins of it, as have now been proven vehemently, can be found with Nazis and Nazi ideology.
And other Bilderberg Group documents have leaked, and we can publicly see the policies of the European Union. They claim if you're not for open borders, you're a racist. So they always use the attack of what they themselves really are. And so that's what's so cold-blooded about this. Take the Royal Commission on Population, 1949. It states if we industrialize the third world, they'll stop having as many children, but that won't give us as much power. So we'll keep policies in the third world through the IMF and World Bank to bankrupt them. They'll have more children. It'll actually chew up the rainforest and the indigenous animals. But that's okay, because later we'll come in with other sterilization programs and just cull off the mass. So we'll use a population bomb as a weapon, and then we'll come in and use a eugenics operation against those people. I mean, this is a scorched earth policy of we'll screw everything up, we'll destroy half the planet if we need to get this system in control. We'll GMO all the crops if that's what it takes to take over the third world populations and destroy their crops. I mean, again, it's just such a diabolical design that they run. And then we see the Club of Rome and the CFR and these European Union groups. Openly, it's always about eugenics and getting rid of the middle class and bankrupting the population and doing all these horrible things. It is just so cold-blooded, Paul Watson, to then understand that this isn't even Nazi. To say Nazi, makes a nice headline in the British newspapers. But exactly. But more than that, it's a scientific dictatorship of eugenics, and the Nazis were only one manifestation of what the Milner Group developed to tear up Europe, so then again, the Anglo-American establishment could come in as the savior. So the Anglo-American establishment can't come into the Middle East unless they fund radical Muslims to tear up stuff so they have an excuse. They can't come into Europe and take over France and the Netherlands and all these other countries unless they can come in and put a Hitler in to do it. Again, they are just masters at engineering these systems and then using the Nazis on the continent and all those funds and treasure they amassed, telling the rich doctors and scientists and the crumps and the elites, join with us now. Here's the real eugenics plan. Go underground into a corporate state, which is what Lord Milner wanted in the teens 30 years before, and we'll let you in on the real system. And then they did, and now Germany's the main engine of the European Union. I mean, these guys are sophisticated, Paul.
Indeed they are. What we need to remember is that, most individuals, most MEPs in the European Union Parliament are not Nazis, but the origins of their organisation is, and the very nature of the European Union in that it seeks to remove power from national governments who are accountable to their citizens, to their electorate, and centralise it into the hands of an elite that are electable to nobody but themselves, is by its very own nature totalitarian.
Well, look,
so even if you don't believe that it had Nazi origins, which are now proven, it's totalitarian by its very nature.
Well, exactly, Paul. But go ahead, Paul.
You've got the Lisbon Treaty coming up again in autumn. Now they can't ratify it without every member state giving the go-ahead, and the only one that's opposed it is Ireland, because that's the only one, apart from a few others, that allowed it to go to referendum. And because Ireland voted no, they're just going to make them vote on it again. They won't take no for an answer.
Stay there. We'll do a final segment with you, and then I promise get through the calls that have been holding. Then I'm going to cover the attacks on free speech and news blitz for the rest of the show. Got a whole other hour coming up. Key, saving the most important stuff for last coming up. But I've got some comments on what Paul's covering as well that are very important when we get back. Study Adolf Hitler. You'll learn that he believed that everybody should become vegetarians by law. I'm not attacking vegetarians, folks. I'm just stating facts here. That there should be laws against hunting. He was against hunting. He was basically more akin to a PETA supporter.